It's old, but is it busted? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Coffee Q&A, your daily dose of coffee Q&A here on the onocoffee channel. I'm Jay, your host, and today we're looking at old coffee recipes, meaning coffee recipes to be used for brewing old coffees to bring them back to life, presuming, of course, that they don't have any more life. So how's everything going? Good to see you, Kent. How are you doing? So I've got this coffee here. This is a coffee that I got quite a long time ago. I got this back in 2022 while I was in Saudi Arabia. This coffee comes from the guys at Camel Step Coffee in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And it's just been kind of sitting around. I don't know about you guys, but like if you're like me, like you've got some coffees and they just kind of sit around sometimes. And you need to get to them. You want to get to them. You're planning on getting to them, but then you just never get to them. So, Mom, how are you this morning? So today I thought I'd share this with you to see. Oh, okay, everyone. There are some people out there that have created recipes that are specifically for old coffees. And that's one of them we're going to try today. It's what they call a 1-to-7 ratio. It is 50 grams of coffee to 350 milliliters of water. As a comparison, we use about half of that, a 1-to-14 ratio, which is 24 grams of coffee to 350 milliliters of water. I think the idea behind this recipe, by doubling it, is that the presumption is that the coffee has lost flavor intensity. So you're trying to make up for that flavor loss by doubling the amount of coffee that you would normally use. But I figured, let's try it and see, is that really going to make a difference? My personal intuition is that it's not, but I've been wrong many times. So we're going to have a look today. What we have here today is a coffee that, as you can see here, it says Elida. I also wrote that here, so remember, in Arabic, right? And as you can see, the roast date was March 13th, 2022. So it's over it's now 3.5 years old. So it's pretty old coffee, and I've never opened. You can see here it's totally sealed, right? The seal is still intact. This probably sat in the freezer for a couple of years, or a year or two after we moved, or until we moved out of the roastery that we were occupying before, and then have just sitting around. So now we're going to open it up, and we're going to see if there's any kind of fragrance that's still locked in the bag that may be coming out. I mean, and there is a two-way valve on here, so it could be, I mean, the flavors could be gone. This coffee, how I came into this coffee is because this is one of the coffees that we used for the 2022 Saudi Arabia Cup Tasters Championship. And I actually have a video about. I should put that in the link description. We have a video about that championship. And cup tasters, where you have competitors who compete by tasting 8 different cups of coffee, and they must identify 8 different flights of coffee. So sets of 3. 2 coffees are the same, 1 is not, and you're supposed to find the odd cup out, place it up, and those who get all 8 correct are then scored or then win or are ranked by the time. So the fastest time and the fastest way to go. So basically you have this setup where I'll just go into it really quickly, where you're presented with these coffees. You're presented with 3 coffees, right? Typically like that or whatever. And as a competitor, you're going to both taste. You can taste, visually inspect, smell it. You can do whatever you want. You just cannot lift up the cup because the marking for the odd cup is on the bottom. So you can do all these things. And many years ago, there was actually a competitor. I think he was from Greece that won the World Cup Tasters Championship by exploiting a defect in the system. And people within the WCE World Coffee events were really pissed off. Like a lot of my colleagues in the organization were really pissed off. I thought it was kind of funny because, my personal belief in competition is that as a competitor, it's your job to push the rules as far as you possibly can, even like borderline breaking. I mean, you push and push until you break them, right? Until it breaks. And the role of a judge or referee or umpire is to push back on you, is to hold you to those rules. And so when I was a competitor back in paintball days, we were playing tournaments. That was the thing. Could I intimidate a ref? If I could, then I was going to do it because, we're trying to win, right? So, but, so if I'm on the competitor side, I want to push it as far as I can. If I'm on the judging side, then I need to hold that line and I need to be as good as that person in order to hold them to the standard, right? And that was, as a competitor, I found that to be in coffee. I found that to be quite frustrating at times because we would do things with the coffee, and the judges, some of the judges I had just were not up to scratch. They were just not good enough to be judges of what we were doing. They might have known their lane of coffee, but they knew nothing else about culinary or flavors or outside of coffee. They didn't know, and it was like, you're missing half of what we're talking about. And so that's why I think as a judge, you really have, or a referee, whatever, you really have to be at the top of your game in order to be a good one, right? And a lot of organizations will push against that. Like the WC pushed against that because, I wanted to make sure that I had a couple of years ago, I wanted to make sure that I had the scratch still to compete. So I competed at a very low level event, and they got really pissed off about that. They're like, well, it has nothing to do with what I do at the world level. It's at the regional level. But, people and organizations don't want what they want. So good morning, Coffee Cove. How are you doing? JR's with us. What's happening? Kent says cup tasters champs are an impressive torch. Absolutely. Absolutely. They're actually the most fun to watch. Everything else is relatively boring. Like even when I was competing, I always felt that barista championship was god awful to watch, just god awful. And like my girlfriend at the time, back in years ago, she was very much into it. She's also a world judge today, but she was always watching. She was always like, I want to watch. I was like, I can't stand to watch it. It's just like, here's my cappuccinos. Here's the coffee. It comes from this elevation, comes from this farmer. These are the flavors. Like, dude, please, for God's sake, make it interesting. And then they came out with the Brewers Cup, which competitors love Brewers Cup because it's so much easier it's so much easier conceptually than the Barista Championship. But I thought that was even worse to watch. Like, now there's nobody talking. You're like, oh my God, this is like, you've managed to make a coffee championship more boring, even less viewer friendly. But cup tasters, I think, is really great because what happens is you, as a competitor, you look at you evaluate the cups, and then you decide, I'm gonna choose this one. And you push it forward. So finally, and that's all you have to do. Then you wait, and then when all the other three competitors are finished, then the host, the MC, will come down and be like, all right, reveal. And you hold up your cup and you get to see, and the audience gets to know right away whether you got it or not. And it's really, I think that's really the most interactive of the World Coffee Championships. But this one competitor early on in Greece, God, that guy was awesome. Like, I wasn't there, but everyone, all the guys that I know that are judges, they were like, oh, you wouldn't believe what happened. And the guy basically came up, looked. He didn't touch the coffee. He didn't smell the coffee. He didn't taste the coffee, nothing. He looked for the color variants in the cups, went straight down, was super fast, and got them all 100% correct. And he won the whole thing. And people were upset. Like, people were really upset. But you know what? It's only about identifying the cup. You don't have to necessarily. There's nothing that says you have to taste it. However, after that, they changed the rules, and now you have to taste all of the cups. So that's and that's how rules evolve. Is that you have competitors that are pushing to exploit the rules, And then, if they find that exploitation, then you kind of have to find a way to maybe close that loophole or maybe let it go. Like I always tell people that ask me about the competition, they're like, it's so difficult to win, and it is difficult to win. Like especially the barista championship, it's very difficult to win. The people that win tend to be the most heavily capitalized, and this is actually the commentary that got me kicked out of the WCE, because I was one of the world judges that was like, well, yeah, it is not necessarily a fair playing field. It's a fair playing field on the day of your competition, right? I'm not, pushing for any particular competitor, although it is possible to manipulate it as the person in my role. But we can go at that another time. But the thing is that they, I see it. I see it worldwide. Everywhere that I went, who wins the competition? It's almost always going to be the most capitalized person out there, or at least the top three will be very well capitalized. They have the most tremendous amount of money, resources, training, all of this. Lance Hedrick and I got into it one time because when this all came out, I was like, well, it's, and I wasn't being pejorative about it. I was just like, well, this is just a situation. I said, at the time, his boss, Andrea from, what's the name of that coffee roast? Anyway, was the current U.S. champion. I said, well, Andrea has this, she owns her own company and she has tremendous resources available to her. And it wasn't meant to be a pejorative statement. It was just like, well, that's just how it is. And so Lance got upset and he was trying to defend his boss. And he was like, if we don't have, it's not like that. We have, we have to practice in a spare, we have a side room or we have a spare old busted Black Eagle espresso machine that has, the espresso machine for the competition is a Black Eagle. Or at least at the time it was Nova Similarly Black Eagle, 3 group head, and he was like, well, and our Black Eagle has a one, only 2 of the group heads work, and I was like, are you trying to argue for my point? Because most baristas that dream of competing, that work at day baristas who work in their own shops or their own work for a company. I mean, they're not going to be able to come in the middle of the day to the practice room with the actual machine being used in competition. They're going to have whatever maybe busted espresso machine in their shop, and they're going to have to do it after hours. So, and they don't necessarily have the kind of resource where you can have nearly unlimited milk, nearly unlimited coffee. And Andrea called the WC, complained, and wanted to have me removed. And eventually they removed me because of that. But that's really, so my thought is that you really need to push. And as a competitor, you need to push. And then as a judge, you need to push back, right? To hold that line, right? And I think that's a fair way to operate in a competition. Powerplant says, when it comes to cup events, it's all about cup stacking. Cup stacking. When things get too codified and pretentious, oh yeah, no doubt. And he gets upset a lot, but his passion makes him good at what he does. I hear you. I mean, I have no animosity against the guy, but I'm just like, dude, what are you? And I think he told me he deleted all the comments that he made, and I didn't delete my comments. It was in a thread on Daily Coffee News or Fresh Cup, or one of those. But I guess he realized that not everyone is going to have access to that kind of facility, no matter how janky that Black Eagle may actually be. But anyway, we're going to get into this coffee. This is the Elita. It's Elita Estates, the Lamastas family estates down in Boquete, Panama. These are coffees that have grown at like 1,600 to 2,000 meters. Very famous in the coffee business, Lamastas. And this is their Elita estate. They have like 4 estates, I think, in Boquete, Panama. And evidently, the story behind the Lamastas family is that the patriarch is originally from Kentucky, so he's an American guy that went down to Panama I can only imagine this happened during American occupation of Panama when they were building the Panama Canal and all that, and it's colonial legacy and all that. But they built this farm in Boquete, or multiple farms in Boquete, and they're some of the most famous producers of coffee in the world today. And actually, I don't really know the Lamos this is, but my friends do, and they're always very, very complimentary about the family members. So I think they're probably doing a wonderful job down there. And this, like I said, this is in Elida. Actually, I had to double check. I ran it through Google Translate earlier today because I was like, does that really say Elida or does that say something? It could have said, I don't know, it could have said geisha for all I know. But this is a geisha, and let's get in to see what happens. Let's open up the bag. See, I just broke the seal. It smells fairly nice. There is a bit of like, for lack of a better term, there's a fruitiness to it, like a dry fruit, like almost like a cascara fruit kind of thing. And when I say this term, it's not going to be really accurate, but I want to say it kind of has a fruity mustiness, right? Like if you can imagine cascara, the coffee. Wait, I have some here. I will grab it. The coffee. So cascara, if you're not familiar, is the coffee hull that is removed during the processing, so that it's it's what covers the beans and the mucilage and all that. And then some people dry it to make a tea. And here, this is it. This is it. This is the cascara here, right? And yeah, there's a similarity. So I guess it's not really musty. More of a dry fruit. But I just want to say musty for no reason other than it's just what pops to mind. Let's have a look at the coffee itself now. Craig's with us. What's going on, Craig? How are you doing? Brew anything good lately? Ask PowerPoint. Craig, I believe that means you're having Ida Batye's Finca Kilimanjaro washed. Always good. Always good. Ida always makes very, very nice coffee. Definitely one of the most celebrated producers in El Salvador. All right, here it is, Elida Estate Geisha, roasted by Camel Step Coffee in Saudi Arabia back in 2022. So 3.5 years old, but still looking nice. Look at that, that's nice. It looks maybe more medium roasted on camera, but it's actually a relatively light roast. But as you can see here, look at the uniformity and the tightness of the beans themselves. They're all very uniform. They're all very clean looking. There's a little bit of variation. That looks like maybe more of a natural issue density thing. So that's one thing. These are natural. This is a natural process coffee. Saudi Arabia, and the Middle East, I think in general, would be safe to say, has a strong proclivity towards natural process coffees, and I do believe that's because culturally, and historically, that's how they knew coffee, right? Because whether you believe that coffee springboarded from Ethiopia or Yemen, coffee eventually made its way to Yemen and proliferated out of Yemen. And so a lot of the coffee drinking started in the Middle East. And because the Middle East is a very dry part of the world, then the easiest way for them to process the coffee was to take it whole, ripe, and just leave it out to dry in the sun. So then they would mill the husk off of it after, and that's where the natural process really began. And that natural process because they leave the hull on it, and the mucilage that's inside the hull and on top of the bean all to dry, it kind of gives a sweeter, fruitier kind of character to it. Now, in Western culture, right, like after Dutch pirates stole coffee from Yemen and brought it to the Dutch East Indian Company to proliferate throughout their colonies, and really that's when it really exploded more in Europe and the West. They went to places like Indonesia where they could where they started using more water processing, so because there was much more water available to them, producing a cleaner cup. A lot of Western people, coffee people especially, tend to feel that they don't like natural processed coffees as much. And it's really just, your own personal taste. I don't really, I'm not so heavy on it as like, there are some people in the coffee business that are like, all naturals are defects. It's like, for God's sake, man, give it a rest. Give it a rest. Peter, Ola to you. So we've got this coffee. So what we're going to do is we're going to brew a baseline brew using our standard 24 grams, 350 milliliters of water. And then we're going to go and make this old coffee recipe to see, will it give us any improvement? Will it make any changes? Is it worth considering for you to make at home in case you happen to be like me and end up with all kinds of old coffees just kind of sitting around, not doing not too much of anything. Let me get our Gen 2. So we're going to get we got Gen 2. Prabhupada says, my parents visited Norway recently and loved the country. Said it was rainy but extremely pleasant. Oh, that's awesome. That's very precise description. Actually, the one day they go to Oslo. No, not Oslo. Is it Oslo? No. Maybe it was Oslo. Anyway, the one day that I did go to Norway had to be, definitely Oslo. It was kind of cold and rainy. Okay, so we've got our, turn that on. And were your parents able to visit Bergen? Asks Kent. All right, 24 grams. We're looking for 24 grams. 24.4, that's good. That's good. And then we're going to keep our grind setting from yesterday. That seemed to work. Oh, no, we didn't do that yesterday. The day before. That worked pretty well. Well, actually, let's go a little bit tighter. We're going to go to the first tick, like past 5. So like 5.333. The other day I was grinding coffee and I put the coffee in without the bottle. Okay, so the aroma that's coming out, the fragrance that's coming out of that is a very dry, there's a very strong dry fruit aroma, fragrance to that I'm finding interesting. Kind of like what you would imagine, if you can imagine what Dimetapp and Robitussin, which are two like cough fever syrup medicines here in the United States that are very popular. One has kind of a grape flavor, one has a raspberry flavor. I love the Dimetapp when I was young. I would be happy to be sick to get it. But the aroma is kind of like a combination of those two. Maybe heavier on the Robitussin side. Right, let's get our. Oh, you know what I forgot to grab? I need to grab some filters. We're going to use basic millennium number 4 filters. If you're in need, I got some links in the description below. There's a link to an Amazon Basics version of this number 4 filter, and I don't know if there's much difference in a lot of the filters. So I know you guys, I think some of you have played around with a lot of these. I mean, the other ones are great. Like we've had the Abaca and the Sybarist and things like that. I don't know. I don't know if I find much difference in them all, to be honest with you. Okay, here we go. Let's put this way. And then now we have to zero that out. Okay, there we go. 24.3. Oh, we're missing a point. We're missing 1/10 of a gram. Palpine says, naturally, they really wanted to see the lakes and channels. They said it was a quaint place. And spent 2 to 3 days in all the northern European countries, including Iceland. Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, that must have been a nice trip. I can't say that. That sounds like a great time. I would like to explore more of Northern Europe. Like one of my good friends, she's originally from Finland. So she's always like, well, next time I go to Finland, because she lives down in, where does she live? She lives in Africa in, oh my, wrong now. What? She lives in, I can't remember the name, but she lives in, not Tanzania, but, gosh, next I don't know. Terrible, I can't remember these things. Okay, let's shake this a little bit just to give us a little bit of flatness. And then now we're going to press our timer button and let's brew. Oh, somebody said pulsing yesterday. This particular kettle, I don't think is very good at pulsing. Not like the Pelican. So I'm going to add about 85 grams. And I'm just wetting it. Oops. A little bit more than 85 grams. $155 in a minute. We're a little bit ahead of the curve, but we probably will start to catch up in a moment. I think typically once the fines that are floating around in the coffee start to settle, it slows down the flow because it's starting to clog the filter more. I just saw a message. One of my clients has left me a message. What is he saying? So while it's hard to see here right now, but like I said, the filter starts to clog after a while, and it's kind of being illustrated pretty well now because the flow has slowed down tremendously, and at least the fall from the top of the bed. But you can also you can't really see it too well here, but the way that it's dripping out is no longer a steady stream. It's kind of coming in, kind of globs. And we're at what, 304, 264. We're behind. See, we're behind now. Well, we were ahead before, now we're behind. The theory is that I'd like to keep about 100 milliliters per minute, so that we finish right between 3.5 to 4 minutes would be the ideal time. Now, so I start to feel antsy. Like I just want to pour it all 350 mils. But I don't want to, I don't like raising the water level more than necessary. Because especially, I guess later in the brew, it's not so bad. Yeah, now we're past 4 minutes, so it's a little bit on the long side. All right, there we go. 4 minutes. So we're going to be at about 5 minutes still. There's still quite a bit of coffee left. Ken says they've probably been to more European countries than I have been. I'm sad to have to say I haven't traveled much abroad. Oh, they definitely should get out more. Well, it's so close, isn't it? Well, then again, I think if you're in Oslo, there's no easy way to drive anywhere, right? Like if you were to drive, if I remember correctly, you could drive to Copenhagen, which I guess means you could drive to the rest of Europe, but you kind of have to go, what is it, all from, I think Oslo's here, you have to go all the way down. And then isn't there, I think there's a bridge, maybe there's not a bridge, maybe they're talking about building a bridge from like the lower part of Norway to Denmark, is that? And then from Copenhagen, you have to go all the way across, like all the way over here. You're like, I think I looked it up once. I was like, that's a lot of driving. Okay, so we've done our brew now. 5 minutes, 22 seconds. I'm just going to toss that. Give it a rinse. Because we're going to use this again in a moment. So here is our elixir. Right, okay. Some of the dry fruit is there. Let's have a taste. Trying to preserve our heat. Oops. Looks fairly nice, geisha. Actually, you know what? Let me get this other glass. I'm going to use these glasses because I want to have the same kind of effect. Like the type of glass that you're using can have an impact on the way you perceive the flavors of a coffee or any kind of beverage. So since we're going to be putting them head to head, I think it'll be more prudent to have the same cups. It's a bit bright. It's very bright. And kind of pungent, kind of tight. A little bit of tannic on the finish. I don't remember exactly what this coffee tasted like 3.5 years ago, but I think it was better than that. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to try this other recipe, 1:7 ratio, 50 grams of coffee to 350 milliliters of water. So pretty much the same thing, but just more coffee. And I think we do need to go a little bit coarser because, there's more coffee. And then again, we'll just leave it because we did one already. So I'm not going to change the grind setting. Try to give it as even and equal an experience as possible. Let's go look here. We're going to take our... Okay, now we're going to tear it out. You need 50 grams. If you're just joining us, this is the Elita Geisha natural process from Lamastas Family Estates in Boquete, Panama, roasted by Camel Step Coffee. And this is a coffee that was roasted the 13th of March, 2022. So it's about 2.5 years old now. And it was sealed in its bag until just a little while ago. And what we're doing, we're seeing if these other recipes are 50.9. All right, we're going to see if this alternative recipe is one that will improve the flavor of coffee. The theory, I think, is that a preponderance of coffee to water will yield better results, help improve an old coffee. All right, so we're going to stay with our grind setting of 5 + 1 tick. Can you see? I can't see it. Why? Because we're so tight today. We're so tight. That's good. Let's go here. There we go. Top man says, yes, their passports are quite full. That is a fun problem to have. That is a fun problem to have. I only filled my passport once. That was I got to 2015 and I almost completely filled it. And one of the issues, in case you do get to that point, is that you need to have space in your passport. Like you had to have like 2 or 3 pages. Otherwise, some countries might not admit you, and you're like, oh, I'm in trouble. And I remember I was in the midst of all this travel, and I was like, oh, man, I need to get and I was running out of pages, and I didn't have the time to send it in because back then you could add pages. You can no longer add pages to your passport. You either buy the 28-page passport or you buy the 52-page passport, but you cannot add pages. But back then you could, and so I was, no time to send in because that takes like 6 weeks. That was like no way. And then I thought about going to the State Department in D.C. because it's only like an hour or so away, but that was more difficult. And so I was like, I got to go to Dubai. And I called the Dubai embassy or the consulate in Dubai. And I was like, can I get an appointment? And they're like, sure, here's the appointment. I was like, all right. So I went to Dubai and got my passport filled, my pages filled, which was kind of fun for the next couple of years. All right, we've got our coffee here. Put this on here. Tear that. 50 grams should be what, 50.4? All right, more or less zero-ish retention. Let me get some fresh water now. Bring that back to a boil. Almost. I mean, I'm curious to know, like, for you guys, do you have any old coffee sitting around? And if so, how old is old? I'm going to wait for this to come back to a rolling boil. But meanwhile, we're going to prepare our stuff here. We're going to shake, make it nice and flat. Actually, I don't like to press that button until it's time because I did that once and I got burned. Okay, we got our water ready. I always like to put a lot of water in the kettle, more than I'll ever need, mainly just to hold that thermal mass. Okay, let's start that flow. Whoops. What happened now? What is going on here? Oh, this is dumb. Okay, fellow. That's not cool. Not cool at all. Okay, so let's tear that. Maybe I need to get out of this functionality. Okay, there we go. 0 grams, 0 water. We're only going to 500. We're only to 350. Oh, yeah, well, let's change this. We can change this to 1 to 7, right? 1 to 7. Okay, now. I changed the way that we're doing this because I wanted to try to level out the thing, and I forgot to do it because we got changed around. So our brew style is totally different than we did the first one, but that should be all right. More or less. Should be okay. And we're already at 200 grams. It's like, we have a much larger coffee bed, and I'm just trying to keep all the coffee bed saturated. 220, 1 minute. Power plant says, please stop with the fellow products. I admit they look nice, but they seem to. Oh, it's not. I'm not in a place where I have a lot of other options for scales. Actually, I do. I gotta say though, I do like the functionality overall. It's a weird. It can be weird. I think it's weird, but I gotta say, I do enjoy this automation, especially after having done manual timing and manual everything for 20 years. To have this kind of simplicity is actually very pleasurable. Coffee Cove says, I have some beans vac sealed, some frozen, and some on the shelf. That's about 3 years old. Oh, nice. What kind of experiment are you planning? That's what I say. That's what I said about these coffees. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have. Oh, I'm way over. Okay, we need to stop. Gosh, just get distracted. Powerplant says at SCAJ, Varia just announced their new VS4 grinder. Ooh, I have used their VS3 Mark II and Aku scale and have been impressed with them. Oh, interesting. I will look that up. Varia's new Aku scale is awesome. Pretty much the best scale on the market. Can do all the calculation of fellow and more. What else is there to do? I'm interested. All right, so our coffee has pretty much dripped through. We are at 3 minutes, 18 seconds. So pretty fast. Or not. It's still dripping. We can still say we're at 3:30, so we're okay. Is that good? By the way, this Bee House brewer that's made by Zero in Japan, it's actually one that I've really liked using for the last, 15, 16, 20 years. Mainly because they're nice ceramic brewers, but they're also at least when Bee House had an American presence in San Francisco, they were always so easy to work with. Back especially in the old days, trying to get Hario products was always a pain. Always a pain. Like actually, I love the Hario products, but I hated them. Hated Hario USA. Because they just made it difficult. They were like, buy a pallet. Buy a pallet. What do you think? Anyway, here it is. Let's have a look at our elixir. Not so similar quantities, but you can definitely see there's a color different. Well, let's make it similar quantities so we can have. Okay, so that's about similar quantity of coffee. Actually, there's a little bit more in this one than this, but you can see there's definitely a difference in coloration just from the brewing, the larger quantity. So I would presume there's more solubles in it. So let's have a taste. Definitely more pronunciation. It's on the aroma, a little more rounded on the nose. Is that an improvement? So there's greater intensity in that first sip. Greater intensity, like is this supposed to be an improvement? If there's just greater intensity, it's intense because it's heavier, right? It's got more solubles in it. We've doubled the recipe. Maybe I'm just not a fan of natural geishas. So when we first started and just had this, I thought it was quite bright, not terribly pleasant. It's still a bit thin. This one, with its intensity, it's greater intensity, right? So, like earlier, I was hypothesizing that perhaps the idea of this recipe is you're just trying to pack more into it because you feel like this has thinned out, and maybe this has thinned out, and this is, but you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of hipster approaches to cuisine, right? Like more is better. Like more is not necessarily better. Like it's definitely like this particular brew, the old coffee and the normal recipe is thin. It's thin. It could have more. It should have more. But this that does have more, it's just too much. It's just too much. It doesn't have that balance. It just got this intensity of flavor. I think there's probably a happy medium somewhere in between. So like, for example, if we took this and we added a little bit to bypass it, just a little bit, just to break it down a little, because there's only very little in this cup to add to. That brightness. People love that brightness. Actually, maybe if you're a bright coffee drinker, you might actually love it. Like actually with this version and this later bypass version, actually, if you like bright coffees, man, that's really got that brightness in it. Not necessarily astringent and not necessarily acidic, like overtly acidic, but just bright. But clean. Both are clean. Light sweetness. The finish is clean, maybe slightly dry in the finish. Powerplant says, pre-wetting the filter does have marked difference in brew, at least in my home experiments. Oh, okay. You can see the amount of absorbed coffee into the filter when you do not pre-wet the filter. Oh, God. I saw prevent, not pre-wet. Pre-wetting allows for the initial brew to flow through the filter. Oh, we'll have to give that a try. But next time. how well they store over time, trying them every so often and logging the results. It's something, what I found, and I don't know if you have found this in your experimentation, is that if I actually am able to hold the coffee as sealed as possible, and it doesn't necessarily have to be vacuum packed, it just needs to be as sealed as possible, and I keep it frozen, and I'm only taking out what I need at that moment, I find that there's very good flavor retention, almost to the point that it's negligible in change and over an extended period of time, right? Like that with the coffee we used last week, the Columbia from George Howell that I got in earlier. Actually, I got that after this one. That was April 2022. This is March of 2022. Actually, I got that. This is a couple weeks older than that one. And that coffee actually had score sheets with it that we did that had recorded from 2-year intervals. And the difference was almost not, it was very negligible, I would say. Craig says the thing to do with Varia is what? The thing with Varia is what are they going to offer to people who bought the first VS3 and had issues? Probably nothing. I think there's a company in the United Kingdom called Bench Dogs, and they do woodworking tools, woodworking like instruments, and they've come under some criticism in that world where, they'll make a product, sell it, and they'll get customer feedback on what was wrong with it, what they didn't like, what could be improved. They'll make a new version and then offer nothing to the guys that bought the previous version. You're like, hey, we told you what to fix. You can at least offer us a discount. It's like, so I don't know. And will that happen for them? I don't know. I can't say, but it would be good if they offered something to previous owners of products that had issues. Coffee Cove says that kind of looked like my coffee dance when I brew a go-go. And Peter says he agrees on pre-wedding. All right, we'll give that a try. But this one, I can't say that this 1-to-7 ratio is an improvement. So if we're using 1-to-14 and this is 1-to-7, I would say that maybe 1-to-10 would be a better. Like maybe if I was going to pour this on ice, so it would be watered down, so we get that cold bypass would be better. But I just don't like that intensity. Yeah, that tones down that flavor intensity and just kind of, and gives it more, it lets the brightness shine through more. Still a dry finish. All right. Well, I guess that's pretty much all that I have for you today. So if you have old coffee sitting around, give it a try. Let me know. I'd love to hear what you think about these recipes. Whether you feel, I'd be interested if you had some old coffees. It doesn't have to be as old as this, or it could be older, it could be younger. But do you find that this, if you have an older coffee, do you find that this high, essentially double brew ratio improves the quality of your cup, or does it not improve? And in this case, like definitely there's more flavor intensity, but is that really what I want to drink? Not really. Peter says, but I want to experiment with dumping the first 50 milliliter balloon pour and see if that changes the taste. Oh, might have to try that too. All right. I've got to remember that maybe for one of the episodes next week. Well, that's all I have for today. Thank you very much for hanging out with me again. Good to see all of you. Be back again tomorrow with another episode of the Coffee Q&A. I've got to go, so I got to make sure that I get rolling because my clients are calling and I need to go and service them. You can take that however you want. So, hope you have a wonderful day or night or evening, wherever you are. Be back again tomorrow. Hope to see you then. And have a great one. See you next time. Coffee Cove says, I did my freezing in the bag as you, but seemed to go downhill after about 3 months. Oh, I wonder if the kind of freezer impacts it. I only have a self-defrosting. Oh, well, you know, that could be, okay, before we go, that could be a big issue. Like, could be because what you're having with self-defrosting freezers is there is a temperature cycling. So that could have an effect on it. I always had mine in commercial freezers, so they would, you know, they die after a few years, but they never stop running. Like, they're just kind of like monsters in that respect. So that could be part of the issue. And also not, I also think that, and I also think that it could be that, like many things, not everything is necessarily suited for that. Like with my aging experiments with coffee, right? Some coffees age beautifully. Other coffees didn't age well. And I mean aging as a green coffee, not roasted. So, yes, some would fall off really fast and some would mellow and age and become graceful. So yeah, high above freezers, above, can't read. Above fridge freezers may not get cold enough as well. Oh, that could be. There you go. All right. See you next time.